Okay, let's unpack this. We all have this mental model of what anonymous means. Right.
It's a comfort blanket.
It is. You participate in a survey or maybe a medical study, and this is key for what we're talking about today, a tech interview.
Yeah.
You just assume that as long as they strip out your name, your email, all that stuff, you're essentially a ghost.
You're just data point number 452.
Exactly. You're safe to speak your mind.
That is the traditional promise.
Yeah.
Redaction equals anonymity. That's the deal.
But here's where it gets really interesting and honestly a little bit terrifying.
Right.
We're looking at a brand new study that suggests that whole definition of anonymity is, well, it's obsolete.
Completely.
And I don't mean obsolete in some vague philosophical way. I mean, it's functionally broken.
Yeah.
We're not talking about some human detective spending weeks with red string on a corkboard.
Right.
We're talking about an AI agent reading your anonymized story, searching the whole internet, and figuring out exactly who you are, all for less than the cost of a candy bar.
It just totally changes the calculus on privacy. And to ground this, we're looking at a very specific event. Back on December 4, 2025, so just last month, Anthropic released this new tool. It's called the Anthropic Interviewer.
Right, for running qualitative interviews.
And to show it off, they released a huge data set of 1,250 interviews they did with professionals about how they use AI.
Which, on the surface, sounds amazing for researchers. Qualitative data is so hard to get.
A treasure trove.
But our mission today is to deep dive into this paper that just dropped a few days ago by Tianshi Li from Northeastern University. And this paper basically tears apart the idea that those 12,250 people were actually anonymous. It reveals how these agentic LLMs, AI that can act on its own, have fundamentally broken the old ways we protect people's identities.
And that word agentic is so important here. We really need to be clear about the shift. This isn't just a chatbot you talk to like the ChatGPT or Claude that most people know.
Right.
We're talking about an automated system that can plan, search, reason. A chatbot is like a consultant. You ask questions. An agent is an employee you give a goal to, and it figures out the steps itself.
And normally when we hear about de-anonymization, I always think of that classic Netflix prize study from, 2006?
Oh, yeah, where they identify people from their movie rating.
Exactly. But that took serious math and, what researchers call a motivated attacker, someone with a real reason to hunt you down.
Time and money.
Yeah. What Tianshi Li's study shows is that today you don't need a motivated attacker. You don't need a math degree. You just need a standard AI model, a web connection, and literally pennies.
It democratizes the ability to dox people. And Lee proved this with a really, really clever experiment. He didn't try to unmask all 1,250 people.
That would be a huge task.
Right, a waste of resources. He focused on a specific subset, the scientists. There were 125 of them in the data set.
Which makes total sense. Scientists leave a paper trail. They publish, they have CVs online. If you're going to test if someone can be found, start with the people who write everything down for a living.
Precisely. And in the interview, the AI asked these scientists a specific prompt. Walk me through a recent research project, from the initial idea all the way to the final output.
And I was reading the methodology, and he didn't just brute force it. He didn't just throw the transcripts into Google. He used this really interesting two-step process.
Yeah, I think a funnel.
A funnel, exactly. It mimics how a human investigator would work, but at scale.
So first, he used what he calls a non-thinking model, so a cheaper, faster, lightweight AI, just to scan the transcripts.
Okay.
He was just looking for a signal. Did this person mention a specific paper or project? If they just said, oh, I work in biology, they get filtered out.
So you're just filtering out the noise. But for the ones who gave the juicy details?
For those, he unleashed the thinking model agent.
And this is where I want to slow down, because the way this agent works is it's fascinatingly creepy. It's an LLM with web search, but he didn't give it a name to find.
Yeah.
He just gave it the transcript and said, basically, find the project described in here.
And this is where you see that agentic behavior. The study actually shows the AI's internal monologue, its chain of thought.
I saw that in the appendix. It reads like a detective's notebook.
It does. It doesn't just guess. It plans.
It writes things like, okay, the subject mentioned a user study with 20 participants in 2024 involving VR headsets. I need to verify this. Let me search Google Scholar for VR studies published in late 2024.
And then it iterates. If that first search is too broad, the agent actually realizes that. It thinks, okay, too many results, I need to narrow this. The subject also mentioned a specific statistical method. Let me add that to the query.
It's actively reasoning. It's not just keyword matching. It's understanding the context. And the kicker for me was that it grades its own homework. It gives itself a confidence rating from low to very high, and then writes out a rationale for why it thinks it's a match.
It shows its work. It'll say, I am very high confidence this is Dr. Smith because she mentioned the specific algorithm, her team size matches the description, and the publication timeline aligns perfectly with the interview.
So what was the scorecard? I mean, these people thought they were anonymous, their names were scrubbed. How many did the machine unmask?
So out of the 125 scientists, the filter found 24 transcripts that had enough detail to even be testable.
Okay, 24.
And out of those 24, the AI successfully re-identified 6 of them with very high confidence.
6 out of 24. That's 25% of the detectable group. That is not a small number.
It's significant. And we have to be clear what identified means. In some cases, the AI found single-author dissertations.
Oh, wow.
If the AI finds your unique dissertation based on your description of the work, it has uniquely pinpointed you. There's zero ambiguity. It's you.
And, 25% is a scary number, but I feel like the scarier number is the price tag. Because usually when we talk about privacy breaches, there's a barrier to entry, you need a team, you need a budget, but you said this was cheap.
This is the urgent part of the discussion for me. The study breaks down the economics. To run this attack, to have an AI agent scour the web, read papers, cross-reference data, and pinpoint a human being, it costs less than 50 cents per transcript.
50 cents? I mean, just think about that. For the price of a gumball, I could find out who is leaking info in an industry survey.
It took about 4 minutes of runtime, and the study emphasizes no code required.
Right.
Like tested a version of this just using natural language prompts in a standard LLM that anyone can use. You don't need to be a Python wizard.
Yeah.
You just need to know how to ask the right questions.
That completely shifts the power dynamic. It just means curiosity is the only barrier. But, okay, I have to play devil's advocate.
Go for it.
Don't these models have guardrails? We've all seen the screenshots where you ask it to do something shady and it says, I'm sorry, I can't help with that. If I go to a model and say, dox this person, it should refuse.
It should. That's the safety refusal. And this brings us to probably the most technical but most important insight from the source. The dual use problem.
Dual use. Okay, let's dig into that.
The AI has guardrails against malicious intent. If the intent is obviously doxing, it'll block it. But agentic workflows let you break a task down into smaller steps. And each of those steps, individually, looks completely benign.
It's like money laundering. You don't walk into a bank with $1 million in cash, right? That triggers an alarm.
The feds get called.
Right.
Right.
You break it down into tiny, boring transactions that just fly under the radar.
That is a perfect analogy. The AI safety filter is looking for that $1 million request. Find this person's home address. But the agentic workflow breaks it into 10 harmless queries.
So I ask, list papers that match this methodology? The AI just thinks.
Oh, I'm being a helpful librarian. Exactly.
Okay, now search for authors who worked on this niche problem in 2024.
Also, just information retrieval. The AI doesn't see the malicious big picture. It just sees a series of helpful tasks. But when you combine them, when the user aggregates those laundered pieces of information, the result is re-identification.
So the safety filters are looking at the individual bricks, but they're not seeing the wall being built.
Correct. And there's another layer here they call the mosaic effect. The study notes that in these interviews, the participants didn't just dump all their info in one go.
Right, it was a conversation.
Yeah, the AI interviewer asked follow-up questions. Tell me more about the team. What was the timeline? What tools did you use?
Which makes for a great interview.
It does. But each answer individually might seem safe. I worked with 3 people. Safe. We use Python. Safe. But the Agentic LLM can look at the whole transcript, piece those scattered tiles together into a mosaic, and suddenly the picture is crystal clear.
So the very thing that made the data set so valuable, the rich, qualitative back and forth, is exactly what compromised the privacy.
Yep.
Which leads me to the so what question. I can hear a listener thinking, okay, a scientist was linked to their interview. Big deal. They were just talking about AI, right? Not like they confessed to a crime.
Well, actually, in a professional context, some of these admissions were incredibly damaging. The study categorizes the harms, and they are significant. This is not just about embarrassment. This is about careers.
What kind of specific damage are we talking about?
Okay, so first, there's reputational harm. Some scientists admitted to lacking technical skills
Right.
or over-relying on AI to do their work.
Oof.
Imagine you're a serious researcher, you published a paper, and then it comes out you said in an interview, I don't really understand the code, the AI wrote it for me. That invites massive scrutiny on your entire body of work.
That is absolutely career-limiting stuff. That's academic fraud territory in some circles.
Then there's relationship harm. The study points out participants criticized their colleagues, complained about collaborators, they vented, thinking they were in a safe, anonymous space.
Oh, man. Picture the lab meeting the morning after that comes out. You're sitting across from a colleague, and you know, because the AI told you, that they called your work amateur. That team is done. The trust is gone.
Evaporated. And then there's the most dangerous category, policy violations.
You mean people admitting to actually breaking the rules?
Yes. Some participants admitted to using AI in ways that likely violate their institution's rules, like uploading sensitive data to third-party tools.
Which is a huge privacy violation in itself, ironically.
Massively. Or using AI to write papers when the journal explicitly bans it.
So these people thought they were confiding in a machine, but they were effectively handing over a confession signed with invisible ink.
Confession signed in invisible ink is the perfect way to put it.
And now we know that another machine can just come along and read that ink instantly.
And remember the stigma. There's this secret use phenomenon. Professionals often hide their AI use because they don't want to be judged. Unmasking them forces them into the spotlight.
So obviously, once Tianshi Li realized all this, he must have called Anthropic immediately. This is a huge vulnerability.
He did. This is the responsible disclosure part of the story. Li contacted Anthropic on December 5th, 2025.
Wow, that was literally one day after the dataset was released.
He realized the danger almost instantly.
So what did he suggest? Take it down.
He proposed taking the data set down, or at the very least, reconsenting the participants. Telling them, hey, technology has changed, you might be identifiable, are you still okay with this?
And what was Anthropic's response? Because as of right now, late January 2026, the dataset is still up.
It is still up. Anthropic's response was telling. And this is where we get into a really thorny debate about ethics versus legality. They stated that participants had consented to the release of the raw transcripts.
Okay, so legally, they're covered, they have the waiver.
But the key quote that the study highlights, and this is the one that really sticks with me, is that Anthropic viewed redaction as, quote, an additional courtesy, not a privacy safeguard.
Whoa, wait, an additional courtesy?
Yes.
That feels like a massive disconnect. I mean, put yourself in the shoes of the participant. You see the black bars over your name. You interpret that as safeguard. You think, they're protecting me.
Of course.
But the company is saying, no, we just did that to be nice. You consented to the raw text.
That's the core critique the study makes. It argues that while consent was technically given, the participants likely had an expectation of anonymity in the traditional sense.
Right.
They didn't realize that their stories, their rich qualitative data, act as a fingerprint. They didn't know that describing their work was the same as writing their name.
It's the difference between legal consent and truly informed consent. How can you be informed if you don't even know that an AI can hunt you down for 50 cents? You can't consent to a risk you don't understand.
Exactly. And the study raises this as a huge open problem. If we can't rely on redaction anymore because the content itself is the identifier, how do we ever release qualitative data again?
If every story I tell identifies me, then I can never tell an anonymous story.
Right.
So what does this all mean for the future? Because these agents are only getting cheaper, smarter, and faster.
The study notes this risk is only going to increase. Right now, the AI used public web searches. But imagine an agent that has access to paywall data, internal corporate databases, leaked information.
Oh, that's a nightmare scenario. Imagine an agent that can cross-reference your interview against the Ashley Madison leak or some credit bureau hack.
The search space for the detective just gets bigger, and the ability to connect the dots gets sharper. We're moving from PII, personally identifiable information, like your social security number, to what they call quasi-identifiers.
Quasi-identifiers.
Which is basically everything you say and do, your patterns, your word choice, your unique experiences.
It really makes you rethink everything you type into a text box. We're leaving these digital breadcrumbs everywhere, thinking the wind will just blow them away. But the AI is like a vacuum cleaner that just sucks them all up and reconstructs the loaf of bread.
That is unique and eligible, but yes.
I try. Okay, we've covered the experiment, the economics, the dual-use problem, the harms. It's a lot to digest. But before we go, I want to leave our listener with one final thought to chew on.
Sure.
We focused on scientists today because they have published papers. But think about this. If an AI agent can identify a scientist based on how they describe their work, what can it identify about you? Think about your anonymized writing style, your Reddit comments, your customer service chat logs. You think you're hidden in the crowd, but you have a unique way of speaking, a unique set of complaints, a unique timeline of events.
That's the chilling implication. In a world of agentic AI, anonymity might just be a temporary illusion. We are all generating data that can be pieced back together. If you write enough, you sign your name.
On that happy note, we'll let you get back to your day. Maybe think twice before you fill out that next anonymous survey. Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive.
Stay curious and stay safe.